There we go.
Good morning, Courtney. Nice to
Hey,
meet you
nice to
again.
meet you.
How's life out there? And how hot has it been out there for you?
Where are we talking? LA? Because I'm in LA part time and I'm in the Southeast part time now. I'm sort of in
Oh,
both
okay. Well,
worlds.
where are you currently?
Southeast.
Oh, okay.
So it's raining right now, even though it's
Oh,
summer and it's staying light till almost 9. It's raining. It's been raining a lot. So I'm glad our reception's working because sometimes when it rains, it doesn't.
when it rains, it pours.
In the Southeast, yeah, it sure does.
Yeah, it's been hot.
And where are you?
I'm just outside of Vancouver, Canada, a place called
Oh,
Maple
okay.
Ridge.
Nice.
Yeah,
Vancouver is such a great little city. Should say little city, great big city.
yeah. Now we were briefly discussing your work, um,
Hmm.
and you've always kind of played the odd man out. Can't Buy Me Love. You're Patrick Dempsey's best friend. Uh, Back to the Future. You were Crispin Glover's best friend. But with Can't Buy Me Love, Can't Buy Me Love, you were kind of the middle guy who was kind of looking out for both parties. You were Patrick Dempsey's best friend, but then you were looking out for, you know,
I think that's an interesting observation that I've played a lot of odd men out. I don't think I could argue with that. I think that outcasts, outlanders, whatever you want to call them, right? I think there's a lot of truth to that. And it's probably not that untrue in my life either,
mm,
on some degree. You know, I was certainly not the popular kid in high school, and I certainly don't think anybody expected me to go on and have the acting success I had, even in the drama classes I was in. I don't think anybody, because it was all musicals and dancing, in high
right.
school. It wasn't really about acting, so they didn't really realize perhaps the chops that I had, because I started studying in a professional workshop when I was 13 and started working professionally when I was 18. And yeah, I think a lot of people were probably surprised. But it wasn't by accident that it happened, and it's not by accident that I've lasted this long. But I like your observation. I think it's a very good observation. And the people ask me what kind of roles I'm looking for, and it falls in that category. Not necessarily saying I want to play the odd man out, but to be an advocate for the forgotten, the marginalized, the weak, the overlooked. That's the stuff that definitely talks to me.
Right.
Is the outsiders. So I think that's an excellent observation. Good way to start this interview. I like it.
Oh,
An
thank you.
insightful comment.
Well, and nothing could be more true than, your character in the Burbs.
Yeah.
He was he was definitely the outcast in the whole movie, and the whole movie centered around the obscurity of that family.
Yes, a strange man in a strange land. Absolutely.
All these yuppie wannabes, and then you got the odd man out again, and
Yeah.
but then just finds that he's just misunderstood, and
Well, that was one of the interesting things of the Burbs is we didn't really know the ending that we were going to have, so it was not really clear whether we were innocent or not innocent the entire way. And then the ending was shot twice, and
oh,
even the third thing was added in, which was the end when you open the trunk and there's all these skulls. That was something done in post even later. So it was,
oh,
they say that's not a good rule of thumb to not start shooting a movie when you don't know the ending. And I liked the ending that they didn't go with, which was that in fact we were innocent. Was the ending I liked, when it really supported. When Hanks goes off and it's like it's not us, it's them. That's the real message of the movie. And then the studios kind of waffled at the end. It's like, no, we better make them bad. It can't be the people spending money to watch the movie. They don't want to. They don't want to hear they're the ones that are
yeah,
the judgmental ones. So they kind of let everybody off the hook after a really great speech.
it was a great speech, and yeah,
Yeah.
the movie still holds up. I just watched it last week, and um,
Yeah, it's also one of those things when I started doing conventions that I had no idea how huge of cult following the Burbs had. How many Burbs fans there really were out there. There's a lot.
yep. Well, Rick Dukeman, he's a
Oh,
he's a local Vancouver.
is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was great in that. I'm surprised. I really thought he'd get a lot more work off of that movie. I really
So
did.
did I. I was surprised that that didn't launch catapult him a bit more success.
Yeah, I often scratch my head about that too. I didn't keep in touch with him, so I don't know the why or what for. But yeah, you would have thought, he's hanging in there side by side with Hanks the whole movie. You think it
Yeah.
would have opened more doors?
Strange things happen.
Yes, it's a crazy business.
Now, speaking of crazy, we can jump ahead now because um, your new movie that's out now is Queen Bees
Yeah.
with a stellar cast. But
Yes.
for Courtney Gaines fans, if you blink, you're gone. What happened
True.
there?
It's just a cameo, right? But it's a nice little cameo, and I
It
get
is.
to.
I mean, you got with four iconic actresses.
Right. That's exactly why I did it. I got to work with Ellen Bernstein, Anne Margaret, Jane Curtin, and Loretta Devine. So I wasn't going to say no. And Michael Lembeck, the director, is someone. His father started a comedy class in LA years ago, the Harvey Lembeck Comedy Workshop, that he and his sister still carry on. So I was in that class for a couple of years, and that's sort of how I fell into that job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because when you walk by in the restaurant, I'm like, hey, he looks familiar. And then when they chase you down outside, I'm like, hey, there he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I was surprised to even make the trailer. I didn't even know if I'd make the movie. You know, when you do a cameo, you never know what's going to stay in. So I was happy to stay in the movie, but I was even more pleased to have made the trailers. So I guess it's a little bit of a pivotal point in the movie if they think enough of it to have it in the trailer. So that's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I think it's because that was a bonding moment for the characters in that
Correct.
scene was a bonding moment for them. So I think that's probably
And
why they have it.
and kicking a guy in the balls always gets a good laugh. So
Right? Especially if it's a biker.
Exactly.
Because you're
Exactly.
just cast as biker.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I know a lot of actors who get really hung up about that kind of stuff. Like if I had said, "Well, can you give me a name?" They would have done it probably, but I don't care. I mean, it doesn't. My name doesn't matter. What matters is, did you remember the scene, and is it funny? And that's all that matters. And like you said, you're like, "Hey, I know who that guy is."
Yep.
That's all that matters. I have plenty of titles like that in my credits on the IMDb. So name doesn't make or break you.
Well, and that's the thing is you've got a lot of movies, but you've also done a lot of TV work over
Correct.
the decades too.
Yeah, a lot of guest stars.
Yeah, like a who's who of of everything basically. Like you've just
And several of those characters are outcast too. If you look at like one of my favorites is My Name is Earl. That guy is
love
definitely an
that show.
outcast. You know, he's trying to build a rocket to leave the world. That's how disenfranchised he is. So that was a great role, though. I really liked that show, and I auditioned for it for all 4 seasons, and ended up getting by far the best role that I'd auditioned for. So that was a nice payoff. That's something I tell actors all the time. It's like, you may not get the first audition you get for a show, but if they like you, they'll keep bringing you back, and you got to keep showing up, and you got to keep having a good attitude about it, because sometimes actors after 3 or 4 times they'll be like, hey, why didn't you hire me, what do you want, and then after that they don't get any more auditions.
Right.
That's not going to get it. It's like they're trying to find you a spot. They like you enough to bring you back, and sometimes it ends up being, like I said, the best audition I ever had for them in 4 seasons is the role that I actually got, instead of getting something smaller, and I got a really, really wonderful guest star. So you just have to keep hitting the bricks, man. Keep showing up and doing your work.
Well, that's the key with anything, right? Like you just got to show them that you want to be there and you're willing to do the work. And
yeah, and you got to be honest with yourself about that. I think that going in and being bitter isn't going to get it, but if you aren't willing to show up, you got to be honest about that too. You have to ask yourself, am I willing to show up today? Because it's very easy to go to the place of, hey, I've got 100 credits, why do I have to prove myself again? It's very easy to go there, and I have gotten there before, don't get me wrong, but it's very easy, but it's not productive. You know what I mean? Being a yes is a better way to be, or take a break for a little while. Go relax, go on a vacation or something, so if you felt burned out. but that's in television, unless you're, you have a big enough name that they're giving you offers for guest stars, you have to go because you have to get network approval and all this stuff. So you have to show up. It's just the best story I ever heard from a matter of Mark Griffiths, the guy that directed me in Hard Bodies. I was in a couple things with him over the years. Is he told me a story of a big actress who was asked to come in for an audition, and she had a big giant purse, and she pulled out an Oscar and slammed it on the table. And the director was like, "Oh, wow. Oh, you have an Oscar. That's great. So you ready to read?" She pulls in the purse and grabs another Oscar and slams it on the table. and he's like, "Oh, okay. So you ready to read?" And she's like, "No." And the bottom line was, the story is she didn't get the job, and it was a great lesson to learn early on, that someone that could be that established, if that director doesn't know them, no matter if they have Oscars or not, still being asked to read. And I was like, well, I guess someone that big could be asked to read. I guess I guess I can too. So it helped my mindset.
That's a great story, because it really puts things in perspective, right? Like, if you're not willing to do the work, then why should we go out on a limb for you? Why should we hire you? And
well, the thing is, I mean, she, if she really felt that way, she should have just said, "Make me an offer or not." I'm a two, her team should have said, make her an offer. She's a 2-time Oscar winner, and leave it at that. But they didn't, and so she went in there with that. No one wants to work with anybody who has an attitude. You know what I mean? You're on set with people 12 hours a day. Right. You'd rather hire somebody you can get along with than maybe somebody who's more brilliant but a pain in the ass. I mean, that's something you also learn, because there's 20, 30 people for every job. You know what I mean? You can find somebody sufficient. So look, I've done it too. I've had attitude in auditions. I didn't like the way somebody was coming off toward me or whatever. And I've lost jobs for those very reasons, because I reacted to what they were bringing. Even if they were inappropriate, it's smarter to just stay calm,
right. Cool heads, cool jets. Now you have a new movie coming out where you're going to have a bit more than just a blink and you're gone. You have a movie called The River.
Just called River. Yeah, no,
The River. Yeah.
It's a little indie film that got quickly turned around and released, which is really remarkable. Normally they can be sitting there for a year or two, easy, sometimes even longer, trying to find a decent release. This thing came out in less than a year, and I have a little trouble describing it in that it's in the sci-fi category, but it's not like a sci-fi in outer space CGI movie. It's not that at all. It takes place in a very small town, and with only a cast of 5. So it's a very small piece. And I play a character named Dr. Michael Glenn, who is the local town psychologist, but he's also the antiques curator and all these things. And the lead girl, he's sort of her surrogate father. And she starts disappearing and having time lapses, and no one knows what's going on. And he actually starts working with her in therapy and trying to figure out what's going on with her. And at the end of the movie, you start to sort of realize what's happening. And it's a cool little film, and it's nicely shot. And I feel our director is going to get more work out of it. This is her first feature, but she's been building up to this moment for a long time. And I think it has a really nice look to it. She does a beautiful job of using natural light and things like that. And I'm very impressed at how quickly they got a good distribution deal. Same company that put out Queen Bees, Gravitas. So
yes,
so that's coming out July 13th. So it's coming up soon.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for it last week, and it looks like a good little film.
How do you like that look with the long COVID beard and very, very different look for me?
I almost mistook you for Bruce Dern.
Yeah, hey, that's a great. Hey, anytime anybody equates me with Bruce Dern, I'll take that as a compliment. He and I got to work together again not too long ago. What the heck's the name of the movie? Whenever I have to think of something and I blank out under pressure. If you look on my resume there, you'll see it. It'll come to me in a minute. But I got to work with him again. What was it, last year, toward the end of 2019, I think it was, like December. But it was great to get to see him again after, I really appreciated how great he was with me in The Burbs when I was a young and up and coming actor. Right. He was very, he acknowledged the kind of work I was doing. He gave me great career advice. And so it was great to all these years later to get to see him again and thank him and get to work with him again. And he's just such a brilliant mind, that guy. His brain at 70s, like twice as fast as my brain now. You know what I mean? He's still sharp, sharp, sharp. And it's a little horror film. Got some other really great people in it too. Hellblazers, that's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
And Billy Zane's in it.
Oh wow, Billy, wow.
Yeah, and he's got long hair in it. It's like I didn't have any scenes with him, but I didn't even recognize him at first. But not used to seeing him with long hair.
No.
But yeah, there's a ton of really good horror types in that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any idea when is that?
I don't. I haven't even seen a trailer yet, and I've worked with the director Justin Lee a few times. I think it's my third time working for him, and he has a way of sort of disappearing during editing. He can't find anything out from the guy, so I have no idea when it's going to come out. So it's in my, on your IMDb, you have your pre-production projects, and you have your post-production projects, waiting to get released. It's in my post file. So
okay.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
Now we can touch on something that's hanging on the wall behind you.
There you go.
Your music. You got your Ripple Street Band, and you have a song that Slash played lead guitar for you.
So a couple of different things. So yeah, so the Slash story is actually a solo record I put out years ago called, and then I did a little reissue on Spotify recently. That song is called Journeyman. And yeah, Matt Sorum, the drummer from Guns N' Roses, produced that for me and brought Slash in at the end, which was just an amazing experience to have because I needed like a good bluesy guitar on there. It was an amazing experience to watch him work, and see how he went about creating a lead, it was pretty amazing. And so that was a while back, but like I said, I just recently reissued it as well. And it's getting picked up in a movie that I did last year called My Redneck Neighbors. I don't know when that's coming out or anything like that. Total comedy, screwball comedy. But that song and Let It Ride, which is a song that I have coming out next Monday as a single. So I have a record I'm putting out, a solo record right now called Acoustic Gains. So it's all just very acoustic driven. Last week had a single come out called Cherish. And Let It Ride, which is very bluesy, and recorded it like in a very vintage style. That's coming out on Monday. But then I also do have the band, and the band is called Ripple Street, and that's a more of a rock, straight like 90s grunge rock band. Our last single we put out is called Would You, and I best describe it by saying it's kind of Black Sabbath-esque. It's pretty heavy, in its sound. Okay. I'm really happy with the way that came out. That came out about three weeks ago. And then we have 2 more singles to put out on that record to call it an EP. And I just tracked the last vocals yesterday. So between my own solo project and my band, we've been putting out a lot of singles this year, which I've learned with the whole Spotify thing. It's really kind of better to put out a single at a time than it is to put out a record. People just listen to the one song you push and they don't listen to the rest. So it's better to just kind of put them out one at a time so people will go on the site and check them out.
Yeah, that's what my buddy was saying the other day. I was talking to him about that, and he's definitely said the exact same thing.
It's a shame though, because certainly you and I growing up, it really was about listening to the whole record. It wasn't just about a single. And the bands, if you're talking like a Pink Floyd with a concept record, or even I think Led Zeppelin's records were always great as a record. There's great singles if you want to call it that, but it was the way they would ramp it up and ramp it down.
I know.
And so I don't like that it's this way, but this is the digital world we live in today, so.
Yeah, because as you can see behind me, I like physical media.
Yes.
Yes. I'm used to cassettes or DVDs.
CDs, DVDs, yeah.
But everything I get sent to review, like Queen Bees, for instance.
Yes.
Digitally, right?
Yep. So yeah, it's this the era we live in. Things have changed. I mean, like you said, physical versus digital. I mean, the record labels nowadays, it's not about, they used to make a killing in CDs, and now it's really about bands touring and their merch and getting their music placed in something like a commercial or a TV show or a movie. I mean, that's like my son who's in his late 20s. I mean, he discovers bands by watching some movie and Journey's in it. And he's like, oh, that's a good song. What is that? And then he goes and finds the band and it's like, oh, what else do they have? And that's really how bands continue to get introduced now to the next generation. But what's weird about that is sometimes they'll be, because it's in a film or whatever, they might be associating say a serious song with comedy, or like, you
I
know,
know.
or I forget what video game he used to play that was like, you know, this apocalyptic game, and they would play all this old like 30 swing on it, and, you know, and like, and he says like when he hears that music, he you know, though it's kind of an upbeat and very clean cut, if you will, he feels sort of a fear, because in the show, in the game he was playing, it was always like someone was going to come out and attack them. So it ends up having these very strange associations that have nothing to do with what the artist may have intended, you know. But that's where we're at, you know.
Yeah, because like a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy, they had a great soundtrack.
Right.
A lot of young kids onto this music that you and I have known for decades.
Exactly.
It's like it's brand new for them.
Right. And I don't think it's a mistake that, you know, that those types of decisions are being made, because it's like, I forget who put that out, but let's say it's Warner Brothers, right? It's Warner Brothers. They also have Warner Brother Records. So like, how do we reintroduce the audience to our stuff? We just keep putting it in our movies, right? It's you know, it's not a mistake, you know. And it works though. It works. It gives it like I said, they wouldn't even know one of these bands from the 70s if it, you know, hit them in the head. But if it's in a movie they liked, and they're like, hey, let me check this out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what else you got going on? You got your music, but have you got you working on any films right now, or?
So the last thing I finished was a BET show called Tales, and it's sort of an interesting. It's their third season. They took a season off and they came back, but it's a 10-episode anthology. So each episode is a completely different story, which, you know, anthologies on television just really aren't done anymore. So that was the last thing I shot, and I play a corrupt cop in that. I'm like the, you know, lead guest star. Our lead, I guess you call it a guest. It's hard to say it's a guest star because they're anthologies, right? Ja Rule's in it as well, and that should help get that audience, that BET audience in. So that's great. But that was a good experience. And what was the last thing I shot before that? What was the last thing I shot last year? I can't remember now. Oh, there's a trailer out for this movie that I'm in. It's a horror film called The Bleeding Dark. And I play the lead in that. I when I say it's horror, though, I have to always sort of say this one is probably the most drama / horror movie I've ever been in, meaning that from my point of view, my character, the storyline is that the father and son lose the mother, gets murdered in their house getting robbed, and the son blames him, and he's depressed. And so the stuff between me and the son is like any drama, you know, any very heavy drama.
Right.
But what happens is the mother starts visiting the house, and the kid starts interacting with her, and that leads to the horror and leads to the violence and the kills. And that stuff is very 80s, you know, as far as like no CGI, you know, it's 80s style. And so I'm interested to see how the movie works, because but I'm starting to realize that there's more. Another movie I was in that just came out on Prime Video last week that none of us, including the director, knew was coming on Prime Video, called Await the Dawn. And it's got Dee Wallace and Vernon Wells and myself. And that movie's fairly dramatic as well. Now that I've watched it, my character's, you know, like with the first kill, not to give anything away, but or not close to the first kill, but it's a fun character. And maybe there's a trend now that some of these horror films are really trying to get a little drama put in them. It seems like maybe that's, because I was talking to somebody else about that and some other films as well. And so maybe that's a new trend, drama horror. Maybe it's a new genre, you know, heavy duty, but, you know, still a horror film in the end. Maybe like less teenagers and, you know, put them in a cabin, and more like adults and, you know, heavy subjects. I don't know, but seems like it. So yeah, so that's another movie that's out that just came out last week, Await the Dawn. So so if you're a horror fan, it's a fun ride.
Yeah, because I liked you in Candy Corn too.
Oh, thank you.
With Tony Todd.
And Tony Todd's also in Hellblazers. So thank you for reminding me of that. Tony and I have certainly been doing the convention circuit for years, and, you know, always been a fan of his work. And so it's been great to get to work with him. I didn't have any scenes with him directly in Hellblazers, but you know, he's one of those guys who certainly has had a prolific horror career, but he's also done a lot of other stuff. He's been able to do, not just be pigeonholed into only horror.
Yeah.
You know, he's had a pretty nice career, and because he does good work, man. He does good work. And bringing him in, I ended up being a producer on Candy Corn. I originally just came in as an actor, but then they had some trouble getting some funding at some point, so I helped do a little bit of that, what they call bridge financing, to keep the project going, and helped bring Tony Todd in. And that movie has definitely, when you think about another drama, definitely drama horror when I think about it. So maybe it's a trend that's happening. But yeah, that was a nice role playing the sheriff in that movie. But talk about a guy who was always a step behind, never seemed to know what the hell was going on.
I know.
All the way to the end, he never quite got up to speed, did he? So
No.
not quite Columbo, this guy.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting project. I ended up being on the project on and off for almost 3 years because of the stop and go of getting it done. But
Oh, wow.
I felt that the director showed a lot of promise, and it was worth doing. And so I was glad to be part of it.
Is it odd for you to watch yourself on screen? Some actors don't like to. I know a lot of people in the industry, and they're like, well, I spent 6 months filming that sucker. I don't want to see anything to do with it for like a year or so. So
yeah, I have sort of mixed feelings about it. I definitely want to see it. I want to, because it's not just about seeing my performance, but I want to see how the movie came together. Right? That's to me an interesting. There's an old saying that I read in a producing book that I think is really true. There's the movie that's written, the movie that's shot, and the movie that's edited. And it's really true, because you never. The devil's in the details, and a lot of times some of the good stuff in a script doesn't really make it to the shoot, based on just the time you have to knock something out. And then the editors who get a hold of it and the music they put in and all those things make a tremendous difference on how it comes together. So I'm always very curious about how the product ends up. Watching myself is always strange, particularly the first time. And the reason is that if I'm doing a character, right, and I'm a character actor, and the person's moving differently, or perhaps talking differently, has a different rhythm, it seems very strange and foreign. So I have to watch that performance about 3 times to get any kind of objectivity. And the other thing that happens the first time you watch it, I don't know about other people, but what happens to me is it's kind of like they talk about in, like, people are dying, they have these flashbacks of their life. When the first time I see the scene, I'm remembering everything we did during the scene. Like, oh, it was raining that day, or it was freezing, or it was 2:00 in the morning, or oh, I was sick, or whatever the case may be. I'm having like a flashback of all those things while I'm trying to watch it. So it's very hard to be present the first time. And I always tell that to directors, and particularly Josh in this movie. I said, don't ask me what I think of the movie the first time. I'm not going to be able to tell you. It's like I have to watch it, a few times to get past all of the experiences and get past I have to ask myself, well, what were the choices I made? And did I execute those choices? And then analyze it from there. So it takes me time. So it's always, the first time is always very odd and unnerving, but I want to see the movie. So I go through it.
So it's a catch-22 for you.
It is. It really is. But usually in the end, I feel pretty good about it as far as my work goes. Once I've seen it a few times and I've sort of digested the choices I made, and if I executed those choices, I usually end up feeling pretty good about my work. So rarely do I go, oh my God, I sucked. That rarely happens.
Or they put in the wrong scene. That one didn't work at all.
Or sometimes there's also an old saying with good editors that says you have to kill your babies. And that means, like, whatever, you got to keep the pace of the movie going. Yeah. And sometimes you have to kill a good scene or a piece of a good scene. And when it's an independent filmmaker and they're also the editor, they might get too attached and not be willing to let go of a scene or two that everybody else is saying, dude, get rid of that. They don't want to hear it. They're too attached. So that kind of stuff. Or like you said something in the first act, and now you're saying the same thing in the second act, the third act. I'll be watching and going, why did they cut that? I'm in it and I'm saying it. I'm like thinking to myself, get rid of that. We don't need it. The audience already knows that information. It's really about what you're revealing to the audience as it goes, right? So I'm always analyzing that kind of stuff when I'm watching the cut, And when I've been a producer, I don't like to sit in the editing room during the process. I tell the director and editor and stuff, when you think you've got a cut worth watching, let me know. and then I sit down and I watch it because they've been in the leaves of the trees for like months. You know what I mean? Like I'm coming and watching like an audience for the first time, and invariably I'll find 15 or 20 minutes to cut out of the movie, and then a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, that's great, but it's easier if I had been in that editing room with them and knew everything they went through to say cut this 1 hour, this one section together. I would be attached to that process too, but that's why I don't want to see it. I don't want to know. I don't know how long it took you. I'm now watching it like an audience and seeing what we can do. And I think that's a good way to do it. It puts a fresh pair of eyes on the project.
Has there ever been a time when you've watched a film you were in and you're just like, oh man, that just stinks? Don't need to name names, but
the movie itself? I've been in a bunch of clunkers, man. Absolutely.
one that maybe succeeded well, but you just didn't care for yourself. You didn't care for the overall film.
No. If it's put together well, and I mean, as long as it's done professionally, as it were, I'm good with it. But I try to be, when I judge a movie, whether it's one I'm in or it's one I'm not in, I try to also judge it not just so what is the genre, be with that, but also what was the budget on this thing? How much time did they have? Right. Because that makes a tremendous amount of difference. The bigger the budget, the more you have time to cover your mistakes. You know what I mean? If you have a bad day of shooting or a bad scene, you can actually go back and reshoot it, and things like that. I mean, a really good example of that on a big level is Can't Buy Me Love. Can't Buy Me Love was an independent film and had some tasteless jokes in it and things. And then Touchstone picked it up, a subsidiary of Disney. It was Touchstone's first movie it had acquired, or second movie, I think. And they were like, okay, we got to go back and do like a week of reshooting, clean up all the tasteless stuff. So they cleaned it up, and then they also dropped the money to get the title track Can't Buy Me Love. I mean, that was not cheap. It was like $250,000 at that time to get that song for that movie. And I mean, there are people, I've been in movies that's the budget. I've produced movies where that's the budget.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They just paid it for one song.
Right. But what the choices they made, they maybe dropped another $1 million into the movie, let's say, or whatever. They saw the potential of it, and they gave it a little polish and then got it out in the world, and it ended up being the #3 movie that summer. So, resources can make a huge difference,
Yeah, and it's a great little underdog story too.
Oh, absolutely. But I was very fortunate in my 80s run of teen cinema that a lot of independent films I did got picked up. I mean, Hard Bodies, which is certainly a B movie, no one would say it's not. But the fact that Columbia Pictures picked it up and did an incredible trailer. The trailer is hilarious. It's just stupid and funny, and they make fun of everything, and it's brilliant. All that stuff, getting that level of theatrical release, it made a huge difference on that movie getting out in the world. So that's certainly something I've learned as an independent producer, that it's hard enough to raise the money, it's hard enough to make the movie, but really at the end of the day, what level distribution deal you get is going to make or break its exposure. No matter how good it is, if you've had to work with a smaller company, it's not going to get out in a big way. Another movie I was a co-producer on was a movie called Dorm Days, comic farce thing, took place in college, whatever. We were able to end up getting MGM to do DVD distribution, just DVD, but still, you're talking about a top 5 studio DVD deal. They were able to get us placed in Blockbuster and things in a big way. Now, everybody took a huge cut. Blockbuster took a big cut. They took a big cut. But that movie got exposure, and we made money because, in fact, it was out in a large way. And then the producer directors of it went on to make 2 more, and we're talking right now about bringing my character back for a 4th. So it's ended up becoming a franchise for them, and that would have never happened if they didn't have that distribution in place. Because once they had that in place, MGM said, "We'll keep taking them, if you keep making them solid." And so it's been very much easier for them to raise money. When you can actually say to your investors, we have MGM guaranteeing a VOD video release. I mean, the money will show up.
Yeah.
That's not easy for most independent producers to actually have a distribution deal in place before you shoot.
No,
not easy at all.
No. Well,
So
MGM just got bought out by Amazon.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense in terms of when we were talking about music. I was talking about how product place. Basically, all the major labels started buying up all the smaller labels to basically it's all about having your library. And now you're seeing the same thing happen in the film industry. Now that everything's going online, it's all going to be all about their libraries. And so it's not surprising Amazon's gobbling up every library they can. And you see what Disney did. Disney was the first one to make a big move.
Yeah.
And out of the big distributors. And I don't blame them. They were so smart that not only do they have the Disney library, now they have the Fox library. And so they bought Star Wars, but they also have Fox. They basically, they're like, okay, now there's Disney. You want to see Star Wars? You come to Disney Plus. Like, why are we giving Amazon and Hulu, movies that we spent millions of dollars to make, and they're getting our product for free essentially?
Yeah.
I think they were the first one to get smart about it, and I think now you see things like Paramount Plus, and I think you're going to continue to see that these networks and are going to continue to try to start using their own libraries and gobbling up more libraries, because that's going to be the game in the movie industry, just like it became the game in the music industry 10 years ago. Got to have whoever has the biggest library wins, right? That's where you're going to go pay your monthly fee, because they've got the best library,
Exactly.
Not that I like it. I like going to the movies, but I think theaters are becoming a dying breed. I really do. I think
because it's so easy to just stream everything at home now.
Not only is it easy, but the home entertainment systems are fantastic. And I mean, people I've seen people with TVs that look as big as a movie screen practically. You're just like, holy crap, that's a television? It's like 6x4 feet. You're like, this thing's gigantic. It hurts your eyes when the lights come on. You're like, hey, okay, enough, But the surround sound and everything people can have nowadays, you don't even need to leave your home anymore. So, and I think theaters will still be around, but even they're starting to conglomerate each other. And I think they're especially with this last year of COVID, I think it really hurt the theaters, obviously, massively. And I think some of them are going to have to sell. And I think it's already happening. So, but yeah, I like going to a movie theater and seeing it on a big screen and all that. So, but times are changing, whether we like it or not.
They certainly are. Yeah. And they've changed a lot over our decades.
Hey man, I started out in film, and it's funny now, and I'm the, you're the veteran guy now, and you're shooting something and you're working with this young actress or whatever, like I was in Tales, and you're like, yeah, when I started, we shot in film. She's like, oh, really? Wow, what was that like? But that's I miss film. I like shooting in film, and I like that an edit was something you took seriously when you cut on a Nagra with film, and you'd splice it and you tape it up and then you cut a little more and cut a little more, because nowadays you can cut as many cuts as you want. You don't like it, you just press the button and it goes right back to where it was. It has no value like it used to. A cut used to mean something, but again, just different times, different world. From analog to digital, basically. We came from the analog era.
That's right. I took an editing course in 1995, and it was hands-on film.
Wow.
Yeah.
How cool.
3 months. My instructor, Eileen Hoyter, she was awesome. But I never went on furthered my education into digital. So
I would think if you could figure that out, I think you could, and these Avid systems and stuff like that are not that hard. I mean, I consider myself a neophyte at all this stuff, but I can do, I have like iMovie, and I can you can splice and dice, it's not that hard. They make it pretty freaking easy. So, but I think cutting on film, that would be a really cool experience, because it's a different thing. That celluloid's in your hands. It's a different thing,
And then when everything was all said and done, she took us to a sound studio where they did all the mix, and
wow,
they had a Foley floor as well right there.
Yes.
A lot of people don't even know what a Foley room is.
No, they don't. And I don't know how much they're used or not used anymore. I mean, because there are obviously vast libraries now of sound effects, but that's the problem too, though, is you hear the same sounds in movies now over and over again. Like you're like, like there sort of becomes a style, and that becomes the thing you hear for like a long time until somebody else invents something new. But I like the idea of getting original sound and things like the sound guy in Exorcist. I heard the story is that to get the blood curdling scream he needed, he was recording and jumped on his wife in bed and woke her up, and that's her scream. Like it's a real scream, an original scream. You know what I mean?
Oh my.
Now, I don't know if I advise doing that to your wife, but I love the idea of him having to figure out how to get what he wanted, not just to go on, oh, here, let me listen to a bunch of screams. Okay, I'll take that one.
Oh
I like that
word.
it's something organic about it.
Yeah, and gone are the days of the scream queens too.
Yeah, that's true. Things have changed. I mean, women now, they got to be the ass kicker now, not just running around and not falling down in the woods, running away. That's not enough anymore.
Well,
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, she's Halloween Kills in October.
Yeah.
He's kicking ass and taking names now.
Right. She's evolved, and it's understandable. That's where it has to be, or why would she even want to do one now? She has to be kicking butt at this point. Makes sense.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, sir? Because
no, I think we covered it.
I can't thank you enough for joining me this morning.
Good. It was good talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, maybe we'll see you
with your upcoming movies. River looks good, and I look forward to seeing any of your other future works. And hopefully one day they'll bring out a remastered or a steelbook edition or 4K of Can't Buy Me Love, because they're doing that with Back to the Future and that.
Oh, very cool. I think there's a 4K release of Children of the Corn coming out in October as well. And I think that's probably because they're doing a prequel to Children of the Corn. They're calling Children of the Corn, but it's a prequel that was shot in Australia during the pandemic. I think it's got some pretty heavy hitters as producers. So I think this one actually might be good. So thus I think they decided to do a 4K release of the original as well. So yeah, you're right. They're happening. So maybe there'll be a Can't Buy Me Love one next. That would be good.
Awesome.
All right, you take it easy.
You too. Take care.